on a horse travelling at 25 miles an hour in a suit of armour where all you can see is just what's in front of you. There's such an adrenaline rush with jousting. Playing the role of a knight, you're not acting, you are being. You've got to learn how to ride a horse, you've got to learn how to wear armour, and then you've got to use weapons. And then you've got to do it on a horse. So you're combining all these key skills at one point. These are the key skills to becoming a knight. I'm Dominic Sewell of Historic Equitation. History was the only thing I was good at school. It's the one thing that's always fascinated me and drawn me back. I grew up in a castle town. I played in the castle ruins as a kid, and it's been an interest that stayed with me literally all my life. I started off just playing around with swords for fun, and then I met a group of people doing some medieval banquets in Nottingham, where I met some reenactors who had done these big, large, full-scale battles. I was captivated when I first went to my first reenactment, and the camaraderie amongst people and how lovely it was to be welcomed in. And it just fired my imagination, fired my love of the 15th century. I remember meeting a friend of mine at that first battle. 3 battles later, he rides by on a horse, and I couldn't believe it. I said, well, you can put the things together and encapsulate that wonderful image of a knight and a horse. And so at that point, in my mid-20s, I went to learn to ride horses. And I realised very quickly that this is something you have to take seriously, because you can't just play with horses. You have to respect them, and you have to learn about them, and you have to learn how to ride them. So to actually paint this image of a medieval knight has taken 25 years to actually become a reality. Traditionally, what we find from records is that young men at the age of 7 would be sent to be educated by a knight. He would work in their household as a page, working his way up, so he would learn to serve at table, serve meals. He would learn from the age of 7, he would learn how to ride and how to fight with weapons. He was trained to be a soldier, essentially. And from there, his whole life until he was 15 or 16 would be dedicated to his own personal training. The process in which people learn to train with arms takes time. You have to use and understand and learn what a sword does. You have to learn and understand what a lance does and how it should be used. This is our arming sword. It's a simple sword, 2 edges, a cross guard, and a wheel pommel, and the grip. Now the sword can be used with both edges at the same time. We call this the leading edge or long edge, this the false edge. You can cut down, parry around, and then use the false edge backwards. So, for example, if I cut forwards and miss, I can still cut back again with the other side. What's most common in the 15th century that we're based in for jousting is the hand and a half sword. The blade is tapered and slightly diamond shaped. It's not particularly sharp until the very end where it tapers away. This is because we can use a technique called half swording, where the sword can be gripped and used to set aside a blade and thrust into an opponent's body. This is particularly useful when fighting against another armoured opponent, where you can search for the gaps within the armour and strike through. Knights were trained to use lots of weapons, but the most common weapon used by a knight on foot was the poleaxe. And in a tournament, it was one of the first things that you would see. Clive takes up a defensive position with a lower guard. Lisa takes a high guard, and what she'll do is strike forward onto her right foot and strike down upon her opponent's head, who parries it and then strikes towards her face. Clearly, the blow from Clive would have won that point. However, if it is a different course of affairs, Lisa does the same thing. She strikes to the head, Clive parries it down, but Lisa turns, knocks the cue out of the way and strikes again to the head. 1 point to Lisa. Here is a lance. It's 12 foot of pine, topped with a training coronal. This is, again, a cast polyurethane coronal instead of traditional steel one that would be used with a solid lance. But you can see how a lance like this would work. In the grip of an opponent, imagine that the wall is our opponent. We strike his shield, and then we can see the flex of the lance start to break. And once our horse goes forward and that lance has gripped the shield, the lance can only do one thing, which is to break. And once it breaks, that energy explodes upwards into a shower of shards. It is truly an exhilarating display of force. The process of making armour is a long and complicated one. Traditionally, armour is made by heating steel plates and forming them to shape the body. What we do in the modern generation is that we are reproducing armour of the past, a whole process that could take up to 6 months, shaping, grinding, filing, fitting, and then we can start the polishing until we're finally happy with what we've got. The first piece of equipment that a rider puts on when he's getting ready to joust are the lower leg defences. These are called the greaves. Next we move on to the knees and the upper thighs. Here we have a corselet of mail. This is all made from 6mm rings of mail. So it's more of a textiles type of armour than solid plate armour. This is a 2-part cuirass. It's the armour that protects most of the upper body. It's all made of hardened and tempered spring steel. It's as near as it is to the original type of steel used.
With the steel like this, it's not stainless steel. A fingerprint will leave an oily residue on it, and that will start rusting effective immediately. So it takes maintenance, and it's absolutely critical.
So around the bottom of the cuirass, I'm attaching extra plates. This one at the back hangs down and protects the buttocks. These plates are called tassets, and they give extra protection to the groin. So the next pieces are the arm defences. These are generally called the VAM braces. You may notice that the elbow piece on the left hand side is significantly bigger than the one on the right. When you're fighting on horseback with a lance, you're using the lance over the neck of the horse to the left. So the more that your left hand side is defended, the better it will be for you. This is a pauldron. These are the shoulder defences. Again, just like the arms, we find that this pauldron is bigger than its right hand side. So again, we are asymmetrical. So the final 2 pieces to put on are the gauntlets and, most importantly, the helm. Training people and horses is a long and complicated process, but it's helped enormously by some of the medieval fighting manuals at the time, particularly one written by the King of Portugal in the early 15th century, Dom Duarte, wrote a book called How to Ride on Every Saddle. And in this, he describes in absolute implicit context how a man should joust. How to look at your opponent, how to carry your lance, how to do it safely on your behalf and on your horse's behalf. So this is why we use the teachings of 500 years ago, because they're still relevant today. There's something really profound about this, what happens to your senses when you're encased in armour and a visor's shut and you can see very little, and that focuses your mind. You can't just dive into it. You can't try jousting. You have to joust. And that's a very long journey from when you say, I might quite like to do that, to actually achieving it. Riding horses just isn't enough for jousting. You have to be able to wear armour. So you have to be physically strong. You have to learn how to carry a lance for long periods of time and to cope with the energy of a breaking lance. You've got to have a lot of aerobic support. You have to deal with a lot of mental stress. You have to deal with physical discomfort. You have to deal with cold, with heat. sometimes all of those things at the same time.
Lacey! Ali!
What English Heritage offers is a chance to step back in time to something is as close to jousting as actually possible to do. Because it is jousting. There's no pretend. People are breaking lances upon each other, how it happened with the equipment that was used at the time. So what you're achieving is a very authentic joust, and that's not something that anybody else can offer. There's many facets to my job, and I love most of it. I love being able to train and watch their journey to being very proficient riders and now performing in front of the public at a high level. And again, the same with the animals themselves. The horses are very, very important to what we do, vital. And watching their progression in training from young horses that are completely untrained, never had a horseman on their back, to the high levels of performance that they can do is wonderful. There's nothing better than seeing a horse when it has its first joust. That never leaves you. It's more than just a job, more than just an income. It's something that has become a way of life. It's something that's imbued within me. Doing what we do for English Heritage is just a wonderful way of really not growing up.